Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
As you know, the hearings began on the 7th of January, and up to now it's almost a year of testimonies that we have had. And we have had well over 150 testimonies here, out of which a number of them were women. Precisely about 29% of the witnesses who testified are women, which is quite a low turnout, and that is one of the challenges of the TRRC, that women should be coming forward more to testify. It is also important to note that we have quite a number of people who have filing complaints as victims, and this needs to continue because it is very, very important for people to file in complaints as victims so that they can be considered for reparations and for the final outcome of whatever the TRRC is going to come with. I would want to thank you for coming once again. It has been a challenging year with us, and particularly my team, the communications team, but I have to say that I am really pleased with what my colleagues have been doing. They have been an extension of my job, and I think that needs to continue, and we work together in harmony so we can make the commission to be what we wanted it to be, the People's Commission, and that has already been achieved with the number of reactions that we are having from the testimonies and from whatever had happened at the TRRC, and that is what the TRRC is actually set out for. So today, Dr. Baba Jallo, the Executive Secretary of TRRC, will give you an overview of the full year and then look forward to what we are expecting for the 2020, the hearings and the themes that we are going to be covering. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Esa, and good morning, all of you. Thanks a lot for coming. I have a paragraph in my presentation. That is the last paragraph, but I think I should bring it forward. And that paragraph essentially is the one in which I say thank you very much to the media. Our media partners, QTV, GRTS, Foria, iAfrica, all of the media that has covered the TRRC proceedings from the very beginning. I'm glad that we have had no cause to complain about any single story that journalists have carried on the TRRC proceedings. And we are very much gratified about the interest and the support that we've received from the media. Without the media, we would have been able to disseminate the information and get the reach that we have gotten over the past year. So the last comes first now. Thank you very much to all the journalists and all the media houses that have covered the TRRC proceedings over the past year. Finally, as you know, and as Esa has said, the TRRC is clocking 1 year. The hearings are. The TRRC started way back, but the hearings are clocking 1 year on January 7. January 7, 2019 is when the hearing started. And the actual operations of the commission started in February 2018 when I was appointed. Between that period and the middle of 2018, we engaged in staff recruitment and nomination and selection of commissioners. And eventually, the commissioners were sworn in October 2018. And then on January 7, 2019, the hearing started. Now, we know that this month, on December 5th, 2019, the TRRC concluded our 10th three-week session. You know, we had the hearings in segments of 3 weeks. So the 10th three-week session concluded on December 5th. And we know that it focused on the former president's witch hunts. And it was the first set of regional hearings, and we had one here. We had one in Jambur, we had one in Sibanor, and one in Essel. So during these regional hearings, 37 witnesses appeared before the commission, and that brought the total number of witnesses to appear before the commission to 188. So far this year, we have had 188 witnesses appear before the commission. Now, this included 51 women. So the regional hearings actually boosted the number of women to appear before the commission because most of the victims were actually women. The 188 witnesses also included 35 perpetrators, alleged perpetrators, and adversely mentioned persons. So 23, please turn off your phones or put them on silent. 23 Gambian diaspora witnesses testified via video link. So 23 witnesses. So the 11th session, that is the next session of hearings, will start on January 28th, 2020. And that session would focus on the presidential treatment program, the AIDS treatment program, but also the treatment of asthma and other ailments. So that is going to start on January 28th. So over this year, we've covered a number of very important themes during these hearings. Among these are the July 22nd, 1994 coup, circumstances surrounding it and its immediate aftermath, the November 11 incident, the November 11, 1994 incident, the January 1995 arrest and detentions of Sana Sabali and Sadibu Hydra, the June 1995 murder of Usman Korosise, the former finance minister of the AFPRC government, the 1996 incident involving supporters of the UDP and security forces at Denton Bridge, crackdown on the media and violations of the human rights of journalists, the activities of the junglers, some cases of sexual and gender-based violence against women, the April 2000 student demonstrations, arbitrary arrest, detentions, and tortures, and the 2009 presidential witch hunts, in which hundreds were forced to drink dangerous concoctions. Now, that is what we have covered this year. Now, over the coming year, which we hope will be the final year of hearings for the TRRC, the Commission will hold hearings on, in addition to the fake treatment program, there would be enforced disappearances, for example, involving Chief Ibrahim Mane and others who just disappeared, the case of the 44 Ghanaians and other West African migrants who were killed in the Gambia in July 2005, the April 2016 incidents involving the NIA and resulting in the death of Solo Sandeng. We'll also have institutional hearings on the NIA. There are certain institutions that the Commission will investigate and hold hearings on. One of them would be the NIA, one of them would be the judiciary, another is the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, and the prisons. So these are institutions that will have institutional hearings on. But while we focus on these main themes, we'll be able to look at cases of human rights violations from the past, the themes that we've already covered. If there are any additional witnesses, like junglers, for example, who come forward, then we'll have hearings on those. Now, we know that the evidence that has come out of witness testimonies since January 7, 2019 shows that there were widespread human rights violations in the Gambia under the previous regime. From both victims and the perpetrators and alleged perpetrators, we have learned of arbitrary arrests, detentions, horrible prison conditions, tortures, killings, sexual abuses, and the incomprehensible practice of accusing innocent people of witchcraft, subjecting them to cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment, forcing them to drink health-damaging concoctions, and subjecting them and their families to a life of stigma and ridicule. So the extent of the human rights violations that occurred in this country defy comprehension, and we are confident has cemented a determination in Gambians never again to allow their rights and dignities to be trampled upon with impunity by the state. In that regard, we are glad to note that our Never Again campaign has registered noticeable impact on the Gambia's national consciousness, however modest that impact is. Now, from the very start, the TRRC has operated on the principle that the ultimate rationale, the ultimate reason for the creation of the TRRC, but also of all other truth commissions, is to prevent a recurrence of dictatorship and human rights violations that happened in the past. That is why truth commissions are created. If you were to point at one reason why governments or countries create truth commissions, it is to prevent a recurrence of human rights violations and dictatorships in the past. Now, we also operated on the conviction that the traditional way in which truth commissions work, which is to investigate, do a historical report, a report of their findings and make recommendations, have not been enough to prevent a recurrence of dictatorship. So from that understanding then, we decided to do things a bit differently in the Gambia, which is to have a parallel process to the hearings. We'll have the hearings, we'll have the evidence gathering, we'll have the report writing, we'll have the recommendations, and so on and so forth. At the same time, we have a parallel process of outreach activities that will engage the Gambian people in a conversation as to the causes and consequences of dictatorship and how we could best prevent a recurrence of human rights violations. So unlike many other truth commissions, we have a model that has parallel processes, hearings on one side, outreach activities on the other. And I think that we have been able to make a significant impact on Gambian social consciousness as a result of that process. So because we have these outreach activities, we created units across the board. So we have a reconciliation unit in addition to the communications and outreach unit. We have a reconciliation unit, a women's affairs unit, a victim support unit, and other units that actually go out there and engage the population. And so all of these units together have conducted about 100 town hall meetings, village dialogues, women's and men's listening circles, and school visits across the country. We have a unit, Youth and Children's Network unit, that is concentrated on dealing with the young people, because we feel that if you want to help build a future, we have to help build the consciousness of the young people across the country. They have visited over 55 schools across the country and engaged about 60,000 young people over the past year. So in addition to that, the TRRC also works as a genus-faced commission. In other words, it faces the past, looks at the past human rights violations with a view to writing a report and making recommendations, while at the same time looking at the future with a view to helping build a future in which it is impossible to impose a dictatorship or commit violent human rights violations. Now, the TRRC is lucky to be one of the very few commissions in the world to be given the power to grant reparations. Generally, truth commissions can only recommend reparations. And as a result of that, you have a lot of countries where truth commissions have happened, including Sierra Leone and South Africa, and a lot of other countries where the victims are left in the lodge. I mean, they don't get reparations because reparations are only recommended, and governments are not famous for implementing the recommendations of truth commissions. But we are lucky here that the TRRC actually grants the commission power to grant reparations directly without consulting anyone. So as a result of that, we are able to include in our work plan an interim reparations program. Now, through this interim reparations program, a growing number of victims are getting access to medical attention. as well as employment opportunities and educational opportunities. About 50 victims have seen the medical board that was created back in November 2018. And we've employed some victims here at the Victim Support Unit, and we have granted or being able to facilitate some scholarships for child victims. We know that earlier this week on Monday, 4 victims who were Yusuf Ambai, Umi Jan, and Abdul Karim Jame. These are 3 victims of the April 2000 student demonstrations, as well as Nogo Njai, a victim of the April 2016 incident, traveled to Turkey for free medical treatment. So they are accompanied by 2 TRRC staff and a volunteer. The staff the escorts of the victims are Aliou Senghor. You know Aliou Senghor, he was a victim of the April 2000 student demonstrations when Yusuf Ambai was shot. Aliou Senghor actually dropped out of school to help Yusuf Ambai. So they've been together all these 19 years, and once we knew that, we actually employed him as a victim support officer, and he's doing a wonderful job here. So he's one of the escorts. He is escorting Yusuf Ambai. Then we have another escort being Samba Toure, who is the assistant victim support coordinator here, and we have a volunteer, Jula Sonko, who is an escort for the female victims, Umijan and Nogo Njai. So this is our first major breakthrough in facilitating access to overseas medical treatment for victims, but we'll continue working with the Ministry of Health and with members of the international community and the local medical community to see how best we can help facilitate medical attention for victims. We have 941 victims registered with the Victim Support Unit now, and most of them, the great majority of them, need medical attention. Just over the past session, when we went for these regional hearings, almost every single individual who drank the concussions has some kind of medical problem, and we'll do what we can to facilitate their access to medical attention. Now, these are just some of the achievements that we have registered, but it has not been an easy journey. We've had all kinds of challenges over the past year, as some of you know. We've been accused of being a witch hunt and all kinds of things. But overall, we have registered a number of significant successes, and we are happy to say that just after a year of operations, the TRRC is now emerging as a new model of truth commissions that other countries are likely to emulate now and in the future. We get a lot of feedback from the international community, especially from the transitional justice community in the world, and they are beginning to recognize the TRRC as a model that other countries should emulate when they create truth commissions. That said, we have had to grapple with many challenges, including the difficulty of convincing some witnesses, especially female witnesses, to come forward and give statements or to testify. In some cases, some people don't understand that giving statements does not necessarily mean testifying. So they could always give statements and not testify if they want. They could give statements and testify behind closed doors in camera, and they could give statements and testify as protected witnesses. So it does not mean that once you give a statement or you come to the TRRC, you will have to testify. So the media is encouraged and to explain, to spread this word that giving a statement to the TRRC does not necessarily mean having to testify in public. If you want, you could testify in public. If you want, you could testify in camera. If you want, you could testify as a protected witness. And if you want, you would not testify at all. So, but it's important for witnesses or victims in particular to give statements, because if you do not give a statement, there is no way you would be considered a victim, and therefore there would be no way you would benefit from reparations. For that reason alone, if you give a statement, it would help us to generate the kind of historical material we need to finish our work. But at the same time, if you give a statement, that means that you might be considered for reparations. But if you don't give a statement at all, you will not be considered for reparations. And we want all victims to be able to benefit from the reparations because they earned it. They suffered for a long time. Okay? Now, the other challenge that we are having to deal with has to do with victims of sexual and gender-based violence, and that is female witness shaming and threatening. Some women who have publicly testified before the commission have been objects of ridicule, insults, and even threats from some members of the general public. Now, this unfortunate situation has the effect of discouraging all but the most courageous female victims of sexual violence from coming forward and sharing their stories with the Gambian public, or even submitting statements to the commission. This is another area in which the support of the media and civil society organizations is highly welcome. The media and civil society organizations with capacity in the areas of social work are welcome to reach out and help our victim support unit in managing the large number of victims we already cater for, but also in helping mitigate or fight this practice of naming and shaming victims. The other challenge that we are grappling with right now is the challenge of funds. We haven't had cause to stop our operations because of the lack of funds since we started. We've always received our funds. The government gives us an allocation every 3 months. I admit that we have to struggle. We had to struggle to get these monies, but the monies eventually have always come through, and we've been able to do our work. So far, we haven't had any problems with that. But while the government has contributed $50 million to our reparations fund, to the TRRC's reparation fund, this is far from enough to cover the Commission's reparations obligations. So therefore, individual Gambian civil society organizations, members of the international community, are encouraged to explore ways and means of supporting the TRRC's fundraising efforts in order to complement government and the public's contributions to provide reparations to the hundreds of victims of human rights violations that we have on our registry and that are yet to come forward. We are hopeful that the government will fulfill its responsibility or its promise to make further contributions to the TRRC Reparations Fund in 2020. So at this point, we wish to take the opportunity to thank the Gambian people for their support and their engagement with the TRRC's hearings and outreach activities. While some of the testimonies are obviously hard to watch, the testimonies have offered Gambians an opportunity to see what went wrong in the past and to discuss ways and means of making sure that what happened here in the past never happens again. So we call on all Gambians to continue following the proceedings of the TRRC and to contributing to both the national conversations and to the welfare of the victims as they have done this past year. We also wish to express our gratitude to the Ministry of Justice, which is our line ministry, for their unflinching support to the TRRC. The Justice Minister himself, Batambedu, has consistently shown genuine interest in our work and has done all he can to ensure that we get the funds we need to run this institution. We also wish to say thank you to the Ministry of Health and the Minister himself, Dr. Lamin Samate, for his support and their support for our work at all times. The ministry has been instrumental in facilitating our interactions with the Turkish embassy, for example, here, and the eventual travel to Turkey of 4 victims for medical treatment. In that same vein, we are grateful to Dr. Charles Roberts and members of the medical board for their continued diligent service to the victims. We also take the opportunity to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for facilitating all of the TRRC's international activities. Gambian embassies around the world have facilitated the TRRC's diaspora engagements in Europe and the United States. They have helped transmit notices of adverse mention to alleged perpetrators living in various countries across the world. So if an alleged perpetrator is living in Spain or any other country and we need to serve them notices of adverse mention, that is done through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And diligently, they are always able to make sure that the individual actually gets the notice and signs for it. The Gambian embassy staff in Turkey, for example, received the victims who went to Turkey they helped them settle down and facilitated their access to the hospitals in which they are to be treated. We are also thankful that the Gambia government, no ministry, not the president, no one have tried to interfere in the work of the TRRC. So we have been able to maintain our independence and integrity, and I hope that is going to continue in the new year. Because like I have said from the very beginning, this commission has to remain independent in order to be able to do its work. We will not tolerate any form of interference in our work. Finally, we wish to express our gratitude to the international community for their unflinching support to the TRRC. Many foreign missions in the Gambia have offered various forms of support to the commission since its inception. No monies, we have to say that since its inception, and to them we say thank you. We are particularly grateful to the United Nations Peace Building Support Fund office in New York and the UN system in this country, and in particular, the UNDP Gambia office. We can safely say that without the support of the PBSO, and in particular the UNDP Transitional Justice Project in the Gambia, it would have been difficult to register, if not impossible, to register the kind of success that the TRRC has registered so far. Our staff of the UNDP Transitional Justice Project, in the persons of Julian Atakla, I have to call these names, they have been very, very helpful. Mr. Julian Atakla, Mrs. Awajuf Peters, Ida Persin, Angelique Mendy, and others have consistently gone above and beyond to support the work of the TRRC. And to all of them, we say thank you. Like I started saying, the last paragraph was supposed to be the one in which I say thank you to the media, but I started with that. So thank you to all of you. Thank you, Stay Balanced, and everyone else, QTV, GRTS, Paradise TV, everyone, iAfrica. Thank you very much for being our partners and supporting our work over the past year. Thank you, and we welcome some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Babajalo. We can now entertain questions. Yes, we start with the lady first, please. Yeah.
Good morning.
Final hearing. What next after the final hearing?
No, I just to clarify, I did not say that the next session would be the final hearing. It's the 11th session. It's going to focus on the presidential treatment program. After that, there are many other themes that we will cover. You know, for example, the institutional hearings on the NIA are there, the judiciary, and other. There are still the cases of the enforced disappearances, Chief Mani and others, as well as the case of the 44 Ghanaians. So that would just be the first session for 2020, and we have other sessions to follow.
Right, Mr. Faya?
If I could just ask 3 questions at a time.
Ask one question at a time.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'll confuse me.
Okay.
And then we'll go and write confusing things about me, Mustafa.
So, my question is relating to that some of we have seen during the course of the first year, you have junglers who have testified, and they have, some of them have confessed to murder. And after that, there were criticisms that some people are calling for their arrest, and because of that, we've seen the UN guy on transitional justice who come here said because of that, some people have lost faith in the TRRC. Do you think that that's the case? Do you think people may have lost faith in the TRRC because some people confess to murder and they get away? They seem to be getting away with it.
Well, I'm not sure. There might have been some people who were a bit disappointed that the junglers were released. But I don't agree with whoever said that the people have lost faith. The great majority of Gambians have faith in the TRRC process. And I have to repeat this. The TRRC had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the release of the junglers. There was an action that was taken unilaterally by the minister or the Ministry of Justice. We were not consulted prior to their release. We had nothing to do with their release. We do our work. The government has the prerogative to release the junglers or release everyone if they want to. But we cannot be blamed for that because we have our mandate, we are focused on our mandate. So investigate human rights violations, at the end of the day, make recommendations to prosecution. So the release of the junglers really has no impact on our work or on the outcome of whatever we're going to recommend. I believe that some people might have been angry, understandably, but you can't blame the TRRC for that, and I hope no one has lost faith in our process because our process remains intact. Right. So you want to ask your other question, or we go to another?
Okay, ask just please.
Yeah. So the second one, you talked about people who are suffering some health complications, the number of your victims. Are you in a position to say what kind of health complications these people have and what sort of help do they need and how urgent perhaps is it?
I'm not in a position to say that precisely because I'm not a medical doctor. But I know that there were some victims of torture, for example, who have all kinds of medical complications, inhumane prison conditions, for example, the witchcraft, the concussions they drank have created some medical conditions. But I'm not in a position to specify what type of medical assistance they need. What we know is that we will send all who come here with medical complications to the medical board, and then once we get their reports and recommendations, we'll do whatever we can to facilitate their access to health services, whether it's locally or internationally.
All right, Yanko, please.
Morning.
When will you present the report to the government?
Would that be the final report?
No, the interim report.
The interim report. The interim report is almost ready. We are talking with the Minister of Health. The Ministry of Justice. We are supposed to submit it on January 7th, but the chair would not be here at the time, so we're still negotiating a date. But it's in the final stages of finalization, if you like.
To you, but I'm not here about the European talk. And then you are here for a Gambian. You went there, it came no press conference, no explanation. Today too, you speak without explaining it. You don't know what happened. Because as far as we understand, we were full monitoring it, and even it triggered public debate on a statement uttered by the vice chairperson of the TRRC about Pony, that the whole Gambia is at peace except Pony. Her statement was unfortunate and people were talking everywhere. Then we would like to know what happened in Europe and what that statement has to do with TRRC.
Well, the statement of the vice chair, I cannot talk on behalf of the vice chair. You will have to ask her that question. In terms of the diaspora engagement, not all of the things that happened over the year are here. So for example, the exhumations of the bodies are not here. So the diaspora engagements went well. They were meant to include Gambians everywhere in the work of the TRRC. Like we have said, they were funded by the UNDP, so not a single penny of the TRRC went into funding those diaspora engagements. And they were also meant to enable the commissioners and staff to see if they could raise funds for the reparations program. But other than that, I think the diaspora engagement went very well. And in fact, there have been talk of whether it should be repeated. I don't think that would happen. But it was a very successful engagement with the Gambian community elsewhere. And it is in line with our inclusivity, our policy of including all Gambians and making sure that everyone participated in the process. But for the vice chair's statement on phone, you might have to talk to her about that.
Young Fatou, do you people recommended that he should be charged with contempt of court? That was your recommendation. And you are all aware that that case has been thrown out of court. And then we would like to know, would that be the style of TRRC? That if you subpoena any person to come and testify, and that person comes and not testify, that person will be subject to charges. And two, the person is claiming for a right. And we are talking about you're not going to doing away with human rights violations. this person is claiming his right, fundamental right, that he believes that belongs to him. You people recommended that it's a contempt. So what is next?
We recommended that?
It's a contempt. That is what we recommend, that he should be charged with contempt. And that case has been thrown out of court. You are aware. So what is next for Yankuba? And because you are saying independence. So independence is questionable. Because there are two things that happen in that issue. He has been recommended that recommendation has been made for his prosecution. And then the case has failed. Within that, the state has used the own witness, even sometimes your statements from TRRC, to prosecute that man again. That person who you are saying you are independent, but still their prosecution running parallel to your work. The release of junglers, you said it has nothing to do with TRRC, but it has been triggered by TRRC because these are people. These are people who appeared here. Some were released and some were not released. We are talking about never again. Detention without trial. His manager is still there. He's not released. What can you justify more on your independence? Because the Ministry of Justice is always taking steps anytime there is something that happens at the TRRC. So your independence is, I can't understand it.
Well, that is according to you, according to your thinking. Everyone has an opinion and they have a right to their opinions, but opinions are generally subjective. So what I say might not be the objective truth, what you say might not be objective truth. What I know about the junglers and the government is that we have a mandate and we are following our mandate. What happens outside of our mandate is not much of our business, because if the Ministry of Justice decides to arrest Yankuba Toure and charge him for murder, that is not why we recommended for his arrest. We recommended for his arrest because he was subpoenaed and he came here and he was contemptuous of the commission. Everyone agrees with that. Now, if the case was thrown out of court, that might have been a result of a procedural mistake by the council, and we don't have any problems with that. We believe in the rule of law. But what happens to Yankuba Toure, or in the Yankuba Toure case, if they are trying him and they need documents from the TRRC, that doesn't mean our independence is compromised. What will compromise our independence is when the Ministry of Justice comes, and we've seen this happen in many other countries, and says, you have to do this or you can't do that. That is when our independence is compromised. As far as the junglers are concerned, again, it's the same thing. We have our mandate, we have our work cut out for us. We are focused on our work. The government is not interfering in our work. They arrested the junglers long before the TRRC was formed. They decided to release some and keep some. That's their business. We have nothing to do with that. What we are mandated to do is to investigate 22 years of human rights violations, to make our findings, and to recommend for prosecutions or other institutional and administrative reforms to the government. Now, what the government does with those recommendations, again, is their business, not the TRRC's. So I think that I would be the first one to protest and rebel if the government tried to interfere in our work in any significant way. I can tell you that. You perhaps we don't know each other a lot, but I'm sure a lot of Gambians know that I wouldn't sit here and allow a government to interfere in the work of the commission in any way that would kind of compromise the integrity of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, Kerr, yeah. Just one minute.
Doctor, recently I've attended a meeting when the UN Special Rapporteur on Transitional Justice arrived in the country. He held talks with the CSO leaders and some religious leaders. But at this meeting, the religious leaders, both Islam and the Christianity side, they both said that your commission actually went towards them, to their mosques and churches, try to convince them that they should preach more of reconciliation than justice. What do you have to respond to that?
That is not correct. If they said that, then they misunderstood what we had said or why we have engaged them. One of the mandates of the TRRC is to promote reconciliation. So if we approach a mosque community, a religious community, it is to discuss ways and means of promoting reconciliation. You cannot force forgiveness on anyone. And if they said that, that is in line with their teachings as well. All religions are supposed to be promoting reconciliation and forgiveness. But the TRRC does not go out there and say to religious leaders, you have to promote forgiveness rather than justice. That is just wrong. I'm sure they probably misunderstood what the conversation was all about at those meetings.
Yeah. I'm editor of Nabanko newspaper. Editor of Nabanko newspaper. My question is, if I'm not mistaken, TRRC has a mandate of 2 years, yes, with a possible extension of 1 year.
With the possibility of extension, not specified.
1 year. So why are you employing your staff with a 1 year basis? And recently you have seen 2 resignations in the person of Khorija Balaje and Alaji Sidi Baro. And according to you, in your Facebook message, you said that Khorija was working at this thing, ICC. So he has a leave. So that the leave was extended for the second time. So they cannot extend it again. So why do you appoint somebody who is working somewhere else, while we have so many competent Gambians here who can man that position? And secondly, why should you give 1 year appointment to your staff? You all already know that the mandate of TRRC is 2 years. And secondly, if that this thing is expired, the 1 year is expired, I think the vacancies should be put on paper so that people can apply, than for those people to continue. That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. First of all, the TRRC did not appoint Khorija Balage. That probably is a fact that is not known by a number of Gambians, that the legal team, all members of the legal team, were appointed on a contractual basis by the Ministry of Justice. So I did not sign the appointment letters at all, right? So that question probably would be better addressed by the Ministry of Justice. In terms of the contracts being 1 year, that is just normal HR procedure. We give you a contract of 1 year. If at the end of the year we are satisfied that you're doing well, we don't need to advertise the position. We could renew your contract, which we have done for a number of, the great majority. Almost all of the staff who have worked for the Commission for 1 year have had their contracts renewed. And before the contracts are renewed, they go through a rigorous evaluation. Anyone can tell you, you go to any staff and ask them. There has to be an evaluation that would be filled, that their heads of units would see, and that would eventually come to the executive for verification and signature. So we have a right to renew a contract or not. We don't have to re-advertise the positions that we have the good people for already on the ground. Right? Excuse me.
Yes, Mustafa.
Yeah, so my other questions with regards to excuse me, I
did you have breakfast this morning?
I noted and I am trying to struggling to get it. Yeah, I did. I have breakfast. Yeah, and it's about the Ghanaians, the West African migrants. You have said that they will testify in the next session, when the TRRC resumes in 2020, sorry. Is it known what time exactly might this be?
I did not say they will testify. 44 Ghanaians? Yeah. How will they testify? I'm saying that there will be a session that is dedicated to investigating. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the timeline. Yes, and it is possible that some of the witnesses in Ghana, for example, Martin Yere, who was the one who escaped, will be invited, and if there are other witnesses, they will be invited to testify. We don't know exactly when they will testify, because that session would happen, because what we have done is leave the work plan flexible. So it would depend largely on recommendations from the legal team and the research and investigations unit to know which theme would come after, for example, the presidential AIDS treatment program. That is how we work, because we don't want to put everything or anything in stone so that we would be stuck. That if there are problems with investigating this particular theme, we would not be able to change because that is written in stone. But we have all the themes that need to be covered for 2020, and that's one of them. That certainly would be one of the focuses of the sessions in 2020, but we don't know exactly when.
Yes, the lady, wait, just the lady.
Okay, yeah, I think I'll go back to my previous question. After all the testimonies, you guys got all your testimonies, what next? Are you guys planning? What next are you guys planning for the Gambian people?
Well, the idea is to finish the hearings. That is the idea right now. In fact, the thinking between me, for example, and the chair is that we should complete all the hearings by July, August this year. We don't know if that would be feasible, but the idea is to finish the hearings and then concentrate on writing the final report and recommendations for the rest of the year. So the other thing that I did not address from the gentleman's question is that, he said extension for 1 year. The extension period is not specified in the Act. It just says with the possibility of extension. And I don't think we would want that much time after the end of this year. I think if there would be an extension, it would be maybe 3 months to 6 months, but not 1 year. I don't foresee that happening. And did I answer your question? Okay. Yes. The report, this one? Oh, okay.
You are planning to take it beyond January 7th because you have some unforeseen issues. And the Act is very clear. Yeah. But your report should have been submitted since, not now.
Yes.
You are extending it again. Would that not be a violation of your own Act? Because you are saying you have been guided by your Act, the TRRC Act.
No, I mean, how would that be a violation? I mean, when journalists ask substantial questions, we have to submit the report after 1 year of operations. After 1 year of operations. That doesn't say the exact date. See, go read the provision again. And what is the problem with that report is only on activities. We only report on our activities. It would not contain any recommendations whatsoever. It would be a very brief report, maybe less than 40 pages long, and we just need to tell the government that this and this and this and this is what we are doing. After 1 year of operations, you see? You see the point? Like, it doesn't say you have to deliver a report on exactly this particular exactly 1 year, after you start operations. So the word exactly there, gives us a little wiggling room. And it's really not a very big deal because our activities are open and transparent. Everyone knows what we've been doing, including the government. So this is just a formality that we need to submit a report, something in writing. Right? I hope that helps.
Yes. At the back, please.
Yeah.
Yes. I have 2 questions.
Usman Maron?
Mane.
Yes. Is Maron here?
Maron not yet.
Oh, okay.
One is about the release of the junglers. Like Mustafa mentioned, Fabian, the special rapporteur on on transitional justice from the UN, did mention that he had about 25 meetings with different sectors. And the response from the public was not that impressive because international law did believe that alleged perpetrators of extrajudicial killings must be tried, must be prosecuted. So in the process of this hearing, if if junglers can come here and testify that they did so and so, and the public see them working in the streets, does that tell well on the Never Again campaign? And secondly, in the 2020 hearings, you did not mention about the exhumations, and we saw only one that have been done at the barracks. Are we foreseeing to see exhumation in other areas?
Well, to start with your last question, yes, I think we are looking at different sites of, possible burial sites, and if we identify for so that we've paid some visits, the research investigations team has paid some visits to several areas where there are suspected graves of people who were extrajudicially executed. So if we are able to identify those sites, then certainly there will be more exhumations. Now, coming to the issue of the junglers again, our work here as a commission is clear. We are mandated to investigate human rights violations and to recommend prosecutions or otherwise at the end of the process. So if the junglers come forward and confess to killing, we cannot say arrest them because they confess to killing. That's not part of our mandate. So if the Ministry of Justice decides to arrest them or to release them, that is for them to explain, not us. That has nothing to do with the work of the TRRC. Now, we are happy that they were willing to come forward. They actually reached out and said, we want to testify, we want to confess, some of them. Others wanted to testify, but of course, they did not come out with the truth as we know it. So the issue of the junglers really came about as a result of the TRRC's work, but then the release that was outside of our mandate, like I said, and I've repeated it many, many times. The TRRC had nothing to do with the release. We were not informed about the release. We were not consulted about the release. We saw it at the same time that everyone else saw that the minister has said that these people might be released. So I can understand people's frustrations, about the fact that these people committed crimes, and that they haven't received justice yet. But as far as the TRRC is concerned, justice can only happen at the end of the process, because we cannot recommend prosecutions in the middle of our work. Well, that is not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to gather the evidence, make our findings, then make recommendations. But the fact that the junglers were released doesn't mean that they will not be affected by whatever recommendations we make at the end of the day. I hope that helps. But I can understand the frustrations of the victims and others.
Another question?
I can ask one more.
Okay.
You can ask two more, sir.
Yeah, thank you. This other one is on the issue of reparations.
Yeah.
We know TRRC is quite an expensive affair, and you've said that the reparations fund, that the 50 million that the government allocated is inadequate, largely inadequate. Have you an idea, since you had already a number of people who have testified, submitted statements to the TRRC, it's around 900? They are about almost 1,000 in the first year. Have you an idea, in terms of your projections, what TRRC may need in the form of reparations?
In terms of money? Now, no. That would be difficult to estimate at this point, because we are still working on the rules and regulations governing the payment of reparations. So that has to happen, and then we have to determine the types of categories of victims, for example, who would get what. So victims of torture, for example, how much money are they supposed to get? Victims of extrajudicial killings, disappearances. All of these are various categories that have to be determined. So at this point, we wouldn't know how much money we would need for reparations. We know that the Minister of Justice has pledged that the Gambia government is going to give us more money, and we are making our own plans to carry out some in-house fundraising activities. But we don't know how many victims we are going to get, and in fact, who is qualified for reparations. That has to be determined as well. So it's going to be a very rigorous process. You submit a statement, and then the legal team and the research and investigations team and the commission will look at the statement and determine what type of victim you are, or whether, in fact, under the terms of the Act, you qualify as a victim, and then how much money should be allocated to that category of victims. So it's still, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Then I can ask you, said I can ask you questions.
Or three.
There is, I mean, TRRC is basically investigating former President Yahya Jammeh.
That's not correct.
Well, it's human rights violations that actually happen under his rule, right?
Under his rule.
And in a lot of cases, he's been part of those who've been adversely mentioned.
Yes.
Has he been served a notice of adverse mention?
Not yet.
But will he be served?
Well, that would depend on our findings at the end of the day. I suspect he would be served at some point, but this is a process. He was the head of state, and we are investigating a whole state apparatus. So you don't serve someone a notice of adverse mention like him in the middle of the process. So we served Edward Singate, for example, Sana Sabali, Aistunjai Sedi, all of the others, because they were all under him. But he essentially was the head of state. So it would be premature at this point to serve him a notice of adverse mention. There is no doubt that he's been adversely mentioned, and he will be adversely mentioned, in the future. So at some point, he will be served with a notice of adverse mention.
Yep. Any more questions? We will have about 5 minutes, so we can.
No, that's fine. Let them. I mean, I'm not in a haste to go. Right. If you have questions, we're not going for the whole day, but we probably can go until 11:15.
Okay.
Yeah, if there are questions.
This would be your own assessment. I mean, your own view of how much I've done so far. I mean, we have. It started as a modest affair, but 1 year on, do you feel impressed yourself by the outcome of what you have seen? I mean, in terms of the number of people who have come, the caliber of people who have come, did it meet your own expectations?
Well, I think it exceeded my expectations. One of the main problems a lot of truth commissions face is perpetrators actually coming forward to testify. Victims are willing to come forward. Professional witnesses generally come forward. But perpetrators actually coming forward is a very, very difficult issue for a number of truth commissions. And, you know, thank God here we've seen all kinds of perpetrators coming forward willingly to testify. There was only one subpoena in the case of Yankuba Toure, but everyone else came forward. They were served with notice of advance mention, invited, and they willingly came forward. I think that is something that we are very happy about, and also the engagement of the Gambian public and the international community, and the fact that, you know, we have been able to generate a very robust conversation and to share knowledge of past human rights violations that happened in this country over the past 22 years. So, yes, personally, you know, I think that we've done fairly well this year. But it will depend on you, the public, to tell us if we have done well or not.
Okay. Any other question?
I can ask final one and then we
go. All right, sir.
Actually, on TRRC 1 year, we're supposed to have one-on-one interviews.
Well, did you make a request, sir? I would be happy to. I wouldn't want to have one-on-one with Stay Balanced though, because he'll kill me. Like.
But my final one is on the show.
Don't blame me.
Yeah. It's about. You said I didn't have breakfast, so you forget my question.
Well, you didn't have breakfast. That's the reason why you forgot your question.
Yeah, so I will let it pass. Maybe I will engage you later on this.
Okay, you can engage me later.
So if you don't have any more questions, we can wrap up. Yeah, one more question, then we can wrap up. Yes.
I did not go on the European tour. I did not go on the American tour. I did not go on the diaspora engagement tours at all. They did not report any challenges, any serious challenges, perhaps traveling from one area to another, but certainly not serious challenges that I know of.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for coming once again. We're really happy that you were here to ask us all sorts of questions about our 1 year of operations. And I would want to mention here that we are, at the communications team, are really grateful to your work as an extension of what we are doing, and we'll continue to reiterate the efforts of the Commission and what we needed the people to know about. For example, we would still continue to appeal to people to come in and give their statement. Like Doctor said in his statement that if any victim is supposed to file a complaint as a victim, so that the person can be in the records of the TRRC and can be considered for any reparations. That is very important. We continue to encourage women to come out to testify or to submit statements for them to be able to be considered as well. So thank you very much once again for coming, and we say we wish you in advance a Happy New Year.
Thank you.
la domoro ka diaten
boy janno CK's restaurant
sa na ko be ni na dimbal nimbe domoro kala janno
domoro seneyata adiyata topotoro fanan kendema bije luntan during tamala abeka domoro ki janni adi manda wala de teka we bijele anim fanan ka fadi jang ikono e fa e ka fa minne ko pastry anim bakery iko fanan be kalele ba de lomba conference lomba workshop lomba ye fo fendin lon dunia kono domoro betama nyillom international o toda number 1
amanke ba domo la jandama
e sa domo jang is atariya
wo mu kubandi
sa na ko sa futandin
oto sa na ko be mu CK's restaurant
ndafa na janna mu yat ni manje dorom bijam
aban
CK's restaurant known for best quality food and customer satisfaction.